Imagine August 10th, 1987, the day they found Alan Lake beside an empty vodka bottle, dead by his own hand. It had been just 11 months since he watched his wife, Diana Dors, die of alcohol-related hepatitis. Their deaths were only 10 weeks apart. Not some tragic romance, but a slow, codependent collapse where they destroyed each other with alcohol. Back in April 1984, millions saw beloved comedian Tommy Cooper collapse on live television. He never recovered, and the truth was right there. Alcohol had worn down his heart for years until it just gave out. The Lancet showed us this wasn't rare. Between 1970 and 1980, alcohol played a role in 37% of UK celebrity deaths. Chronic alcoholism often cut lives short by the time they hit 52. This wasn't just gossip, it was a public health emergency hidden behind glamour, and the entertainment industry didn't just look away. They made it easy, encouraged it, and cashed in on the suffering. The British Journal of Addiction stated plainly in 1978 that alcoholism was still widely regarded as a moral failing, not a medical condition. Studios ignored the problem, friends laughed it off, and interventions were virtually non-existent. Consider the industry's role. British pub culture wasn't just social, it was occupational. Scripts were signed over pints, deals were sealed with rounds, and stress was drowned in spirits. Producers accommodated it cynically, scheduling around drunkenness, exploiting intoxication for raw performances, and covering up incidents to avoid bad press. Treatment, when sought, was prohibitively expensive. The Priory Hospital in London charged £850 per week in 1979, equivalent to over £5,000 today. For stars in decline, rehab was simply out of reach. Let's start with Donald Pleasence, the intense actor from Halloween and Bond films. On set, he was rock solid, but off-camera, he told the Daily Telegraph in 1984 he'd spent more on whiskey than on his homes. You know what's chilling, though? His struggle stayed hidden because admitting it would have ended his career. Studios refused insurance for actors they knew were drinking, so guys like Pleasence had to choose: keep quiet while their health and money bled away, or speak up and vanish. The message was clear: admit you're struggling and your career ends. Hide it until you collapse and you become a spectacle. Neither option offered survival. That silence wasn't shame, it was survival strategy in an industry that weaponized stigma. Then there's Roy Kinnear, that warm-hearted actor from How to Steal a Million and The Three Musketeers. In 1988, he died after falling from a horse on set, labeled a terrible accident. But here's what got buried back then. The autopsy revealed he was severely drunk when he fell. Autopsy reports, archived by the UK General Register Office, revealed blood alcohol levels consistent with severe intoxication at the time of the accident, a detail buried then but now understood as critical context. The industry called it bad luck, but the evidence points to impairment. He wasn't just unlucky, he was impaired. Now, film schools study his death as a stark lesson about safety and alcohol on set, a case study in what happens when production continues despite obvious warning signs. Comedian Al Reed vanished in the 1970s after drawing 20 million viewers with The Al Reed Show. It wasn't that audiences stopped loving him, producers simply refused to insure his shows because they knew he'd show up drunk. He died forgotten in 1984, tabloids writing off his liver failure as bad luck. Behind the scenes, though, phone calls stopped, job offers dried up, and the industry closed ranks not to help but to protect itself. What the public never saw was the quiet erasure of a career, the systematic abandonment of a star who'd given them ratings but now represented risk. Struggle openly and you're fired. Struggle alone and you die quietly. Reed experienced both. Singer Doris Troy, who lent her soulful voice to the Beatles on Something and her own hit, Just One Look, hit bankruptcy in 1981 from bar debts. Everyone blamed her management, not her addiction. When she finally sought help, London's Priory Hospital charged £850 per week. That's over £5,000 today. For stars already fading, rehab was impossibly expensive. Troy wasn't bad with money, she was priced out of survival by an industry that took her talent but refused to fund her recovery. The music industry whispered about bad management, while the real problem, untreated addiction combined with financial barriers to care, destroyed her career and drained her resources. She filed for bankruptcy in November 1981, the bar deaths a public humiliation that marked the end. Tommy Cooper's collapse on live TV wasn't a stumble, it was a cry for help screaming to millions. He'd been visibly unwell for years, his drinking wrecking his body. In 1978, the beloved comedian slurred his way through a magic trick before staggering off stage on ITV, broadcast to a nation that had grown up with his comedy. This wasn't just entertainment gone wrong, it was a man publicly deteriorating while everyone watched, unable or unwilling to recognize what was happening. He died months later in April 1984, alcohol directly fueling that heart attack. Medical consensus, reflected in contemporaneous reports and later analyses by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, confirms alcohol was a primary contributing factor to his cardiovascular collapse. Newspapers called it tragic coincidence, not what it really was, an inevitable outcome. Today, groups like NACOA show Cooper's final TV clips to teach families how to spot the warning signs early. The laughter finally stopped when it mattered, but the lesson his death teaches continues to save lives. Richard Harris, famous as King Arthur in Camelot and the spy who came in from the cold, had a drinking problem that grew legendary through the 70s. His booming voice and fiery presence were undeniable, but by the early 1970s, his consumption was destructive. In April 1974, seeking redemption after a near-fatal incident, he signed a 5-year sobriety contract with his family, later saying with heartbreaking clarity in The Guardian on March 17, 1974, "I thought I was drowning the pain. Turns out I was drowning the man who could swim." But here's what makes this complete. The contract failed. After his divorce hit in 1976, the devastating collapse of his most stabilizing relationship, his drinking roared back with catastrophic force. Film archives now restore his raw 1974 interviews through the BFI's Sober Reels project, so students hear his regret. It wasn't some quirky project, but a man fighting for his life and losing. Where the industry saw eccentricity, we now recognize a desperate attempt at survival that the system failed to support. Peter Cook, comedy's golden prince and genius behind Beyond the Fringe and Private Eye, hid his drinking behind sharp wit. A wit so sharp it defined an era, yet privately he was drowning. His friend Spike Milligan remembered him ordering triple vodkas at lunch, saying, "Keep the ice, I'll drink it later," while everyone laughed, clueless how to help. This admission from Milligan's 1989 memoir, Milligan at Sea, highlights the era's fatal ignorance. Cook wasn't offered treatment, he was handed another round. Cook faced liver failure as early as June 1977, his first major hospitalization that was ignored as a one-off. Nobody treated it as serious. By August 1989, after his third major hospitalization for liver failure, it was too late. It was essentially a death sentence masked as treatment. But here's the part that reveals the depth of shame. His daughter confirmed he sought help secretly in 1978 because going public would have ended his career. He even performed a sketch called Drunk while hospitalized for cirrhosis in 1983, a dark testament to how deeply the disease had infiltrated his identity. The cruelest twist? Liver transplants for alcohol-related damage barely existed in Britain then. The procedure for alcohol-related cirrhosis was scarcely performed in Britain until the late 1980s, so Cook never got that chance. The most brilliant comic mind of his generation died just 6 years later, the laughter finally silenced. Oliver Reed gave powerhouse performances like in The Brood, filmed in March 1979, his talent still undeniable, but his drinking was an all-out war, existential warfare with himself. Director Ken Russell's diaries, published in 2015, reveal Reed drank 12 bottles of wine daily while filming Tommy in 1974, and Russell allowed it because his anger at sobriety made the performance raw. This wasn't direction, it was exploitation masquerading as artistic choice. But here's where things get dark. When Reed's agent tried an intervention after wrapping The Brood, Reed fired him on the spot and plunged straight back into drinking. The relapse was immediate and catastrophic. This wasn't celebration, it was self-annihilation. Reed wasn't just drinking to celebrate, he was drinking to erase. The industry didn't save Reed. They used his destruction to fuel raw performances, then walked away. Accommodation became complicity. His later roles just showed the hollow shell alcohol left behind, a hollowed-out version of the man who once shared top billing with John Wayne in True Grit. The gnawing void alcohol created consumed everything else. Alan Lake and Diana Dors weren't a love story, they were drowning together. Lake, the handsome star of Help, wasted away from alcohol, hospitalized in June 1980 for pancreatitis, a ghost of his former self. Diana Dors put it perfectly in the Daily Mirror on October 1, 1980. "He's not the man I married. The bottle stole him." Those words captured a horror millions could see but few understood. Lake barely made it through her funeral on June 12, 1980, as a broken ghost barely clinging to consciousness. His final public appearance was a man destroyed. Then he died by suicide just 11 months later on August 10, 1987, following a violent bar brawl beside an empty vodka bottle. And here's what breaks your heart. Diana herself succumbed to alcohol-related hepatitis just 10 weeks after Lake. 10 weeks! Their deaths were separated by mere weeks. The cruelty was exponential. Two people destroying each other, each unable to save each other, watched by an industry that called this devotion. The industry called it love. It was mutual destruction they both couldn't escape. Their intertwined destruction wasn't romance, it was codependent annihilation playing out in real time. At number 1, Peter Sellers made us laugh as Inspector Clouseau, but behind the scenes his life was collapsing from alcoholism. What audiences never saw was the systematic self-destruction operating behind comedy's mask. His on-set meltdowns, physical breakdowns, and 4 failed marriages weren't quirks, they were the painful reality of advanced addiction. They were textbook manifestations of disease the industry refused to name. The industry enabled it completely. They scheduled shoots around his drunkenness, kept filming after he collapsed, and profited from his genius while ignoring his disease. Contemporary accounts document escalating tolerance from wine to harder spirits, withdrawal symptoms requiring filming during specific windows, and alcohol-fueled violence that destroyed his relationships. But here's where the system's complicity becomes undeniable. On the set of Revenge of the Pink Panther in 1977, Sellers collapsed. His divorce finalized that year, citing alcohol-fueled violence. Yet no one stopped production. The system accommodated him, enabled him, and ultimately failed him. When he died of a heart attack in 1980, the Lancet's research made it clear. The Lancet's 1979 data is unequivocal. Chronic alcohol abuse was a primary driver of premature cardiac death among British celebrities of that era. Decades of heavy drinking directly caused that cardiac failure. His 1980 heart attack, listed as the cause of death on official records, sits squarely within the known cardiovascular carnage wrought by decades of consumption. They didn't just fail Sellers, they actively helped destroy him for profit. The industry didn't just fail to save him, it actively enabled his destruction. These 10 stars didn't choose oblivion. An entire system steered them towards it, blind to addiction's grip. But their stories changed things. The shift has been profound. Now actors enter rehab openly and return stronger, a cultural transformation that seemed impossible in the 1970s. The UK's 2023 Celebrity Duty of Care Act forces reality shows to provide addiction counseling, a direct response to the tragedies of the 70s that were allowed to play out unchecked. Young people still struggle to see parental alcoholism as illness. NACO's 2023 report reveals that 75% of people under 30 still fail to recognize it as a medical condition. But these stories are changing that. One documentary, one archive, one restored interview at a time. Richard Harris said it best, "I was drowning the man who could swim." They drowned, but today we're finally building the lifelines they never had. The bottle stole them, but their legacy ensures it won't steal others so easily again.